diary. Well, it was pretty much a week like most of my other weeks. Just same thing, different week. So yesterday I was gardening, and I feel like that's a nice way of saying I had a couple minutes to run outside and pull as many weeds as I could, but I'll call that gardening. So yesterday I was gardening, and I feel like those are the times that God speaks to me the most, is when I'm gardening, and I use that time a lot to ask God what in my life needs to be pulled out and what needs to be worked on. And so in the 2 minutes that I had to frantically pull things out of my garden that shouldn't be there, I felt like God was telling me, Andrea, you need to be better about just taking the time to inventory your life and be introspective. Because just like the garden, if you don't go outside and take the time to look around and see what needs to be done, then ignoring the problem doesn't make it go away. So it was a huge moment for me, even though it seems like such an easy, small concept. I know all the work that has to be done in pulling up unforgiveness and bitterness in my life. I know how important that is, and I know that a lot of times weeds are such a great example of those things that shouldn't be there, sin issues, unforgiveness that shouldn't be there in our lives. So while I know that, I felt like it was this new moment, this new concept, or reminder from the Lord of, you have to take the first step in just surveying your garden, surveying your life, and seeing, what do we have here? What are the things that shouldn't be here? Let's take an honest look around, and let's also take time to enjoy the good things and enjoy the growth that God has brought in my life, and be thankful for the beauty of His grace to grow the wonderful things in my life and the characteristics that are evidence of His presence in my life. So great 2 minutes gardening yesterday, and frantically pulling weeds, but knowing I've got to be introspective in my own life and know the things that God is asking me to uproot and work on, and to move forward with constantly being sanctified. So then the other thing that I'm really working towards is knowing that Cry It Out is coming for Lincoln. Lincoln's 5.5 months, and he just sucks with napping. He was so good for the first month of his life, and then from there it's gone massively downhill. He naps for usually 35-ish minutes at a time, and then it's over with. And I'm so frustrated by this process, because it means I can hardly get anything done, and I can hardly spend concentrated time with my older children, because we're just, I feel like I'm always trying to get Lincoln to nap. So I know that Cry It Out is coming for Lincoln, and thankfully that's something that Nathan takes over when it's time, but it's hard knowing that it's coming, and it's painful for me knowing that he is going to have to do that. So I'm preparing myself now. Then I think the other thing that's going on in my life is realizing that my kids a lot of times adopt my attitude or my opinion on things, and really praying into, how do I teach my kids to think for themselves? And maybe my attitude and my opinion on something is what their attitude and opinion should be, but maybe it's not. And how do I teach my children that I'm not always, don't always use me as the example. Know what you believe and why you believe it. Know how you feel and why you feel it. And so today, one of my children was parroting back something that I have said in the way past that maybe isn't even true, but I heard one of my children say it several times, and I thought, I'm not sure that child even knows why they think that. I think they're just saying it because they've heard me say it. And I don't like that at all. So that's going to be a process of thinking more about how do I help my children to know what they believe and why they believe it and why it's their own. And that it's okay to not always believe the same things as mom and dad, but they need to have to know why they believe that. So that's the week for me, and nothing too exciting or funny, just a lot of small God moments.
Dear Journal, coming at you this weekend, sounding a bit like the love child of Pee Wee Herman and Ray Charles. Got struck with the man cold again, which is pretty much like any other cold, only way worse. Definitely worse. Guys get colds way worse. They get them worse. Stop arguing the Journal, they're worse. So dealing with that. The main thing I have today was something that was brought to my attention by a friend of mine, actually one of the assistant coaches of the baseball team that I coach, Jackson's baseball team. I'm fortunate to have 3 guys that I coach with who every one of them are just amazing guys. And one of them sent an article to the rest of us as coaches this week from a website called desiringgod.com, I think, or .org, I can't remember, but Desiring God's the handle. And it was an article that was talking about the importance, for men in particular, of having close friendships with other men. And I've read tons of articles like that before, but one thing that this article said that really stood out to me is it made the argument that your children, my children, will be impacted maybe even more so by the men that I have around me as they will by the man that I am. And it really struck me to think, this coach was making the case that the boys on the baseball team will be good boys because they're being coached by good men. And it really got me started thinking about what is the quality of the men that I have around in my life and by extension around my children. Are they good men? And I feel like they are, but it really made me start to think, am I being intentional about having other good men around my kids, around my wife, around me, good couples around our family? And we've tried to be good about that, but man, it really struck me today when this article said, look at the quality of the men that you have around you will directly impact the quality of men and women that your children become. And I've really spent a lot of time thinking this week about that, the quality of the men I have around. So yeah, that's the main thing that I've been thinking about this week. Guys, thanks so much for joining us for the diary. I better get out of here before Lincoln gets on and tells us all about his week, which does not sound like it's ending well. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.